If you've ever maybe tried to work inbound leads or prospects that weren't referrals, maybe were a little colder or not even necessarily bad leads, but just earlier in the nurturing cycle, you may have run into the situation where you meet with a prospect, you have a really productive call, you say, hey, awesome, well, why don't you send me some more details or statements? And then once I get those, we can reconnect and maybe start to put together a plan. And next thing you know, you never hear back from that prospect. Maybe you give them a call once, they don't answer, you shoot them a message, no answer, and all of a sudden you're ghosted. And when you thought you'd had such a great conversation, you're now trying to chase down a prospect or you just gave up entirely. And this is a situation that we just recently had with one of our advisory partners who was getting a lot of great first conversations, but kept saying, well, then everything just fell off. And so we were looking, well, what's going on? Why are we struggling to close business here? We started diving into his sales process or his acquisition process and what he was doing to actually convert these inbound prospects because they were warm. They knew who he was. They showed up for a call. He had a productive call, but there just kept being this drop off. And we figured it out. The problem was he was leaving the next step with prospects in their hands. And what would happen is he would go ahead and have great first calls and assume that the prospect would get back to him. Now, this may work in certain scenarios. Sometimes prospects are super high intent, they're ready to go, they're gonna get back to you quickly, but that's not how it always works. Think about your day-to-day life. I'm sure you've purchased things before, services you've started. A lot of times it's not the first thing on your mind or the only thing on your mind. Prospects are just like normal humans. They have a day-to-day life where they're going about and doing their everyday things. They are not thinking about the statements they need to get back to you right away. They're not thinking, oh, when am I gonna speak to Mr. or Mrs. Advisor next? The issue is we cannot leave the next steps of our process in the prospect's hands. And this is what a lot of advisors like to do because they don't want to come off as salesy or be too pushy. But we're not being salesy or pushy in this method that we've created to prevent drop off of prospects. And so I'm going to dive into this because really one of the big things here is that with preventing prospect drop-off, the first thing you have to understand is inbound leads do not equal referrals. No matter how warm they are, no matter how great that first call goes, they are still feeling you out, going through that journey from lead to client. And if you've consumed our content, you know that there are multiple steps it takes to get even a warm inbound lead over to a client. It doesn't happen overnight and it takes a little bit of sales. Now, we don't have to do this in a necessarily salesy way or hard close people, but we do need to do it in a structured way. And that's something we're going to go over here. Really what it comes down to, and the framework we've created for this, is the calendar commitment framework. So we sat down with this advisor, we're really digging into what's going on because he was getting a lot of great appointments, good quality assets, but again, there was a fall off. It wasn't that the conversations were bad, the leads weren't warm, there was just a fall off. He was leaving things in the hands of the advisor, saying, oh yeah, send me over the statements, or oh yeah, fill out this risk analysis form, and then we'll get back in touch, just to never hear back. And so we created the structure of how you keep prospects from obviously dropping off. And I'm gonna go over it. So the first thing here is we always wanna have a clear next step. We never wanna leave it on prospects' hands to figure out what's next, what they need to do next, even if it is sending over statements. We want it to be very clear and structured. And so the way we structure these calls or the sales process for warm inbound leads is a 3-meeting process. And what we do is we frame everything within this process as structured. So it's not a salesy process. It's just the process we take when working to help prospects and then eventually them become clients. The way it starts is always with the meeting one. That's when you are first meeting with a prospect. You're going through that initial discovery. You're kind of figuring out if they're a good fit and you're building rapport. And most of the time for our partners, they have great first calls. They're typically pretty good fits. They've got assets and they've built some good rapport. Now, what we've implemented is that second meeting needs to be structured. And I'll kind of explain that in a second, but I know that a lot of advisors have a system where they need to get data. Of course, some prospects in our systems will show up with statements really ready to engage, but sometimes they don't, and you don't want to let those prospects drop off. Doesn't mean they're not interested. It just means you're not the number one priority on their mind. What we do is we structure a meeting 2, which we call our strategy consultation. And this isn't something new, but the difference here is we always have a clear next step, which means we frame it as a part of our process. We lay it out. We had a great call. Well, here's how the next steps are. We're going to schedule in a time, pick a set time, say we'll schedule a time a week out. Again, frame it as part of the process, not salesy, not a tie down. And what we do is before you hop off that first meeting, you book in that second meeting there and then. Even if you're gonna need to wait on that data collection or for them to send things over, by you booking a call a couple of days out, what you're doing is, again, setting clear next steps, as this is where we need the data. So they know, hey, I have a call coming up with said advisor in 4 days. I need to get him details. They're tied down to that appointment, because if they were gonna give you hesitancy when booking this next call, they likely weren't gonna become a client. But a lot of people won't give you that hesitancy, especially if you're kind of putting together a plan or a strategy for them to present to them. So again, framing that second call as a part of the process, booking a call from a call, and giving them a set kind of time frame to get you information. Here's the next step. We want to make sure we're always sending a confirmation email plus an additional value add. In that first meeting, you likely found out some details about the prospects, maybe something that was on their mind, something they were trying to aspire to achieve, or something that they needed help with. What we want to do is, when we structure this next step and we say, hey, in 4 days, we're going to meet at 10 a.m. Eastern time, I'm going to prepare some stuff for you. Now, what we do is we know, okay, maybe it's going to take me a day or two to get this stuff together. Put in a reminder, and it takes a little bit of manual work unless you have a CRM system or something like we've built out where you can auto remind yourself to reach out with a personal text. And what I mean by this is this text should actually come from your iPhone. It should be a blue text, and it should be saying hi to the prospect, obviously, but reminding them of their appointment if they haven't sent you details already, and saying, hey, just make sure you send me over those statements. Let me know if you need any help finding them. Also, I found this really interesting article about said topic you guys were relating on, about some new tax implementations by the Trump administration. Thought you'd find it interesting. Again, what are we doing? We're building off of that rapport. We're making it seem like we were trying to send some value, and we're confirming the appointment coming up in that we need the data from them. It feels very natural. It doesn't feel salesy, and it also continues to move them along through our process. So they show up to this appointment, great. You lay out that plan. You can tell if they are liking the plan, if they have questions, and what's going on, because in this call, we're going to be laying out the strategy, diving deeper into kind of their situation and building a gap. This is really where we're analyzing where are they at and where do they want to be. And so once we've analyzed that, we need to tie it down. And again, how do we do that? We're going to have probably an hour time blocked off to dive into things. Once we've completed that, we're going to follow the same framework. Clear next step, framed as part of the process with the calendar invite booked before ending the call. So our meeting 3, the implementation call. And I put quotations around this because I'll give you a little tidbit. With inbound prospects, now with referrals, maybe it's great. It's like a 2-3 call close. Perfect. They're really warm. But with inbound prospects, you never want to push the sale too hard, because as soon as you push the sale too hard, you might run into some resistance, which is going to then really cause drop off. So although we call this the implementation call for meeting 3, what we really want to do is dive into what it would look like if we implemented these strategies we had built out, handle those objections, their concerns, or what are their worries about kind of working with you or moving forward, and then tie them down to an extent, really get them bought into the plan, really hit home. And this is part of being a good advisor and being able to find these pain points and help these prospects out. So little tidbit here, and if you watch our case study with one of our advisors, you'll hear him mention this as well, as what really helped him close more business. Instead of really holding it down as this is the last final step, schedule a 4th call. I know you probably don't want to drag out your sales process, but if we've got a system for converting inbound leads into clients, it's okay if we have to take an extra call. It's not a referral. And what this 4th call does is you can tell if someone is still a little hesitant. Do not be like, so are you ready to implement the strategies? So are we ready to get started? Again, you're going to build resistance. What we do is we say, hey, I think, this is great. You've got a lot of great information here. Why don't we do this? Why don't we schedule a call out for a couple of days out, maybe 2-3 days? Why don't you go take some time, read this over, see if you have any questions, and we'll meet then and kind of answer any more questions you have. And again, we're following the same framework, clear next step. It feels like it's a part of the process. We're saying, go take your time, digest everything. We're booking them in for a call before ending the call, and we're confirming again right here via a blue SMS from our phone. And in this SMS, what we're going to do is again, tie them down and share some value. Maybe bring up something you were thinking about from their last meeting. Maybe mention something that would provide some value to them, or even if a simple rapport building to remind them of the call. And you want it to be from your phone, a blue text message, so it's personalized, not from a prospecting system, and it builds more relationship with that prospect. A couple of things here. When you are booking calls or kind of following that structure of a call from a call, we always want to keep it tight. I get it. Some prospects may be like, oh, let's book it out 2 weeks. Guess what? That's a pretty low intent prospect. We want to try and keep that structure from call 1 to 2 to 3 and then potentially 4. We really don't want to have more than 2 to 3 days in between these calls. 2 to 3 days, 2 to 3 days. Maybe for the data gathering, you can have like 3 to 4. But again, 2 to 3 days, possibly for this fourth call, maybe 1 to 2 days. We don't want to let this drag out and be a multi-week process. So what happens if the prospect gives you a little resistance or if they're a little hesitant? Well, that tells you the intent level of the prospect to an extent. Because if someone's saying, oh, let's reconnect in a month, they likely aren't really looking to move forward. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be working that prospect. You need to have systems in place, but you want to try and tie them down to a closer meeting. So when we're trying to keep a close time frame between calls, the key to this is booking that call before the prospect gives you a time. So instead of you wrapping up the call, yeah, perfect. Well, I'll wait for you to get me those statements and then we can kind of reconnect. Let them know, awesome. Well, here's what I'll do for you. Say it's the 13th of February. Well, here's what we can do, John. I'll book you in for February 16th. What I'll do is I'll send you this link here. You go ahead and upload your statements and then I'll go ahead and get everything prepped for that plan for you or that strategy. Sound good? Great. Give me 1 second. All right. So I got the 16th, 1 p.m. works for you. Great. All right. Did you get that calendar invite? Perfect. It popped up on your calendar. Great. All righty. And then let me just send over that link for you. Perfect. You got the link? You access that? Great. And you have an idea of where you got to go to get all of that, right? Perfect. Okay. Well, if you need any help, let me know. We didn't give them a chance to say, oh yeah, when's a good time for you to reconnect? We assume the next date. That is how you keep this moving through. We don't want to let it drag out and ask them when they want to book, because then we get these follow-ups that are out 2 weeks and we're letting it just kind of mull around. So again, every call, the same thing. From this call, great. We meet on the 16th, got the plan in place. Okay, well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to send you the plan, go find some questions, and then we'll kind of discuss and I'll find some gaps here. Perfect. Let's book that out for the end of this week. Why don't we do that on the 18th? Sound good? Perfect. Alrighty, I'll book that in. Calendar invite. Got it. Alrighty, and I'll email you all of these plans, paperwork, all of that great stuff. Boom. The call is booked. We got it 2 to 3 days out and we're good to go. If they no-show to that appointment, you might not have done a good job of building interest, of building the gap, of getting them to want to move forward, but that's okay. At least we didn't try and fall for a 2-week out call and we figured things out sooner than later. We can then put them into a long-term nurture sequence. In between these calls, it should be that blue text message from you with a value add and a reminder. Now you're probably thinking, oh, I have to message every single prospect a little value add and a text message in between appointments. Yes, clients are worth a lot to you, especially if you're looking for high quality prospects. If I'm speaking with someone who has $2 million in assets, it's okay if I have to manually put a reminder on my calendar to shoot them a text message that takes me 5 minutes. And that's when we're dealing with warm inbound leads. And obviously we're not going to be texting all leads manually, but when you get them in this prospecting process and you're building rapport, it should be those blue iMessage text messages for reminders and adding some value in those texts. And that's how we're going to prevent that drop off and build rapport, because the truth is, in the advisory industry, your clients are worth a lot to you. So you want to take this prospecting journey very seriously. And that's something we work on with our growth partners a lot, because to be frankly honest, getting the inbound leads up to that appointment or halfway mark is great. And you want to do that the right way, but you still have an entire back end to then convert them to a client. And so we do this in a way that, again, follows this framework. So we're not coming off as overly salesy, but we're always having clear next steps. We're always framing it as a part of the process and then booking a call from a call. If there's one thing you remember, it is always book a call from a call. Even if they don't show up to that next call, that is fine. At least we kept them on our radar and we found that out that they weren't serious. But we don't want to just leave someone to their own devices, because they could have been very serious, but without clear next steps and a next time to meet, they don't take it as serious. And then of course, that confirmation blue text with the value add. So this is the framework we follow with all of our growth partners. It's something that if you implement in your back end prospecting and appointment flow, it will help you from losing those prospects who you had such a great first call with, but somehow disappear from you.